Hey everyone, hope you're doing all right today. There's a really important update I want to talk about, and it's something that's going to affect a lot of households across the country. The Trump administration just announced that it will only pay out half of November's food stamp benefits, also known as SNAP. And yeah, that means millions of families could be getting less help putting food on the table this month. It's a big decision, and the story behind it says a lot about what's happening right now with our government and how everyday people get caught in the middle. So let's talk about what's going on, why this happened, and what it could mean for you or people you know. All right, so here's what's happening. The Trump administration announced it will only distribute about half of the usual SNAP benefits for November. The decision came after weeks of legal back and forth during what's now one of the longest government shutdowns in U.S. history. The shutdown started back on October 1st, and it's basically frozen a lot of government funding, including the money used for programs like SNAP that millions depend on. Normally, the federal government spends around $9 billion a month to fund SNAP. But earlier in October, the Department of Agriculture, which runs the program, told states they didn't have the funds available to make the full November payments. They actually ordered state agencies to stop their normal processing for benefits, which left a lot of families wondering if anything would come at all. You see, it wasn't until the courts stepped in that anything changed. A federal judge in Rhode Island said the USDA needed to either pay the full benefits by Monday or at least pay something by Wednesday. Around the same time, another judge in Boston gave a similar ruling, basically saying that the government had to use its emergency SNAP funds to keep the program going. So under that pressure, the administration decided it would move forward with partial payments. They're using money from what's called the contingency fund, money that's set aside for emergencies, to pay half of the normal benefits for every household that qualifies for November. Another $600 million from that same fund will go toward administrative costs and helping territories like Puerto Rico and American Samoa. Now, the administration has said it's doing this because it's legally limited in what funds it can use. Officials argue that other sources of money, like the funds used for school lunches and child nutrition programs, can't legally be used for SNAP. They've said that shifting money from those accounts could cause bigger problems down the road, like leaving schools without meal funding for children who rely on them. The USDA's Undersecretary, Patrick Penn, explained in court documents that using those child nutrition funds for SNAP would leave an unprecedented gap in the school meal program and that Congress might not fill it later. So, in their view, this decision to only pay half the benefits was about protecting those other programs while still trying to follow the law. President Trump echoed that point too. He said that if the courts gave him the legal authority, he'd be honored to provide the full funding, but that his legal team doesn't believe they currently have that power. So, on paper, the administration says it's following the rules and trying to act responsibly with the funds it has. But here's the thing, critics see it very differently. Many Democratic lawmakers and advocacy groups argue this is about politics more than legality. They say the administration could find ways to keep benefits going fully if it really wanted to. Senator Amy Klobuchar called it morally negligent to only pay half, saying it's not enough to just do the bare minimum when people are struggling to eat. And a group of attorneys general, governors, and nonprofits have filed lawsuits to try to force the administration to release full funding. They're pointing out that back in 2019, during Trump's first term, his administration actually issued guidance saying that contingency funds should be used to keep SNAP running during a shutdown. The courts have even cited that earlier precedent in their rulings, saying it's inconsistent for the government to suddenly claim it can't act now. One of the groups leading the charge, Democracy Forward, said it shouldn't take a court order to force our president to provide essential nutrition. They're continuing to push for a full release of funds, saying the partial payments just aren't enough. And honestly, if you think about it, that argument makes sense for a lot of families. The average household that receives SNAP depends on it to fill the gap between income and rising grocery prices. So if you suddenly get half your usual benefit, especially during a time when food prices are already high, that's a big hit. Now let's talk about the logistics side for a second. Even though the administration has approved these partial payments, that doesn't mean everyone's getting them right away. The USDA says it could take weeks or even months in some cases, for states to reprogram their systems to handle the reduced benefit amounts. A lot of states use old computer systems to process EBT cards, and those systems aren't built for quick changes. Some may need to manually adjust payments, which increases the chances for errors or delays. That means millions of households that normally receive benefits early in the month may have already missed their usual November payments. And as you'd expect, the impact has been immediate. Food banks across the country are seeing long lines again, especially in cities like the Bronx, Philadelphia, and Boston. Some local distribution centers say the demand looks like what they saw during the Great Recession, with families waiting hours for emergency food. I think that's the part that really puts this into perspective. When a federal program like SNAP slows down or stops, local organizations have to pick up the slack, but those groups often run on donations and limited resources themselves. So while the administration talks about legal funds and contingency budgets, the reality is that people are already running out of food. Now, some of you might be wondering, hasn't this kind of thing happened before? And yeah, it has, but not like this. SNAP was created back in 1964 as part of Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty, and even through recessions and political fights, it's always been kept afloat because there was bipartisan agreement that feeding Americans shouldn't be optional. What's happening now is different because it's happening during one of the longest shutdowns ever. And the debate isn't just about money, it's about ideology. For decades, there's been a divide between how the two parties view programs like SNAP. Republicans tend to focus on limiting spending and promoting personal responsibility, while Democrats emphasize its role in preventing hunger and supporting struggling families. This latest decision has basically reignited that debate. Only now it's happening in the middle of a real crisis. For many people, this isn't about politics, it's about survival. Now, looking ahead, the big question is, what happens next month? The contingency fund being used for these partial payments is now almost empty. If the shutdown continues into December and Congress doesn't reach a deal, there may not be any funds left at all. Some state officials are already warning that if nothing changes, December could bring a total SNAP blackout. Food banks are bracing for that possibility. In some places, they're setting up drive-through distribution centers in stadium parking lots to handle the expected surge in need. And it's heartbreaking to think that families could be in this position again next month if Washington doesn't act. So yeah, this is about more than just half a payment. It's about what kind of safety net we want to have as a country. Do we protect programs like SNAP even in times of political disagreement? Or do they become bargaining chips in larger budget fights? For those of you watching who rely on SNAP, I know this news can be stressful. The best thing you can do right now is to check your EBT account regularly. Watch for updates from your state's social services department and reach out to local resources if you need help. Many community centers and food banks are expanding hours and taking emergency requests this month. And for those who aren't directly affected, this is one of those moments where small acts can make a real difference. Donating to a local pantry, checking in on neighbors, or even just staying informed so you can share accurate information with others. You know, it's easy to see headlines about government shutdowns or court rulings and feel like they're far away, but this is one of those cases where decisions in Washington have a direct impact on what's in someone's fridge tomorrow. That's why I wanted to cover this story, because understanding it helps you see the bigger picture of how these systems really work and how fragile they can become when politics get in the way. So what do you think about this? Do you think the decision to only pay half was justified, or do you think it should have done more to make sure everyone got the full amount? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts on this one. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Because whether you're on SNAP or not, we're all connected when it comes to how these programs shape our communities and our economy. Take care of yourself, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.